Georgia seems to be able to flip the switch. That was Kirk Herbstreit on the Dawgs. Whew, they sure do. And you better hope that you have an offense that can keep up with them because right now it's getting scary out there, man. I mean, Georgia has played well for some time now, and when you look at where college football is headed, in this postseason, it's gonna be a real challenge for someone to knock off this Georgia team because, and Kirk called the game Saturday night. I mean, he knows he can see it. These guys can score. It's amazing, and the defense is not. I mean, I don't feel like I need to. I don't feel like I should have to justify every single thing I say when I say the defense isn't as good as it was. Okay, well, the offense is. Does it matter if you win by 18 or 17? Like it matters if you've got a bunch of money on the line. We don't do that here. We don't. That's not something that we're talking about. It's not something we really necessarily care about. Really, does it matter if you win by 1 or 18? I mean, I don't think it does necessarily. I think it just matters that you win. And when Kirk's talking about UJ seems to be able to flip the switch. Yeah, that's right. They are a lethal situation right now. Yeah, I've talked about this a lot. You start thinking about guys like, if Kendall Milton's going to be healthy, I mean, you better buckle up because you already got Edwards. You got Milton, Edwards, Mims, Bowers, McConkey. These guys are all healthy now. What does that mean? It means you're in some trouble if you got to defend it. And there's some curious thing about talking to Carson after these games. And, I don't know if y'all see every single thing that we post, because sometimes we don't put it on YouTube and Facebook. Sometimes we don't put stuff up. That's what the website's for, dogpost.com. Are you a member of our website? If not, I got a special offer coming up for you pretty soon. But in the meantime, sign up for our newsletter down below. When you're talking to Carson, I said to him, can you see guys that are wide open? He's like, yeah. I think it's amazing that they're that open. Like, why can't other teams do that to Georgia? Well, Ohio State did for a while, and then they adjusted. That's the other thing too about dealing with this team, dealing with this Georgia. The hard part is you're always gonna have to deal with them. Like, there's nothing easy. Like, I thought against Ole Miss, there was never a moment where I was like, "Oh man, Georgia's in trouble." No, because Ole Miss couldn't stop them. Now, when you get to a situation where the other team is stopping you and they're scoring, I mean, obviously you're in some trouble then, right? I mean, like, it doesn't take a scientist to see what we're talking about there. Hey, you can see these eco-poly. Man, look at these. I'm obviously sitting in it, but eco-poly is made of completely recycled plastics in the heart of Georgia and Eastman. They are wonderful partners, and they are really taking care of us. Why don't you take care of yourself by checking out some of these deals they've got? 15% off and free shipping for the holidays. They got some really awesome deals. 20-year warranty. Yeesh. And by the way, it's got items that it's built with to where you're not going to be it's not going to fade in the sun. So this can be used outdoors all the time. Poly lumber. It's awesome. It feels just like wood, except it's better. I'm just going to stop for a second. It's better than wood. Why? I'm not getting splinters. Right? There's no threat of a splinter here. But anyway, the threat for everybody playing this Georgia team is, and Ryan was talking about this on Saturday night. You got to beat them for 4 full quarters the whole time. It's not fun, man. Like, do you have that many big guys? Do you have that many explosive players? Is your quarterback ready to ball out? Like the quarterback at Florida State, he can ball out. Now, he makes mistakes. Penix, same situation. Probably the guy at Florida State's a little deadlier, but, can you ball out like that? And do you have a defense that's not going to get tired? I don't know. There's not a lot of that out there right now. There's not a lot of like Alabama can match up with Georgia. Alabama's just not as good as Georgia. I think that's where we're at with that whole thing. Um, so there's that. I mean, like, there are a team, but like I'm taking a pregnant pause here because you're trying to think of who can really do it, and it's hard. I got an old magazine over here that I'm looking at the poster of Brock Bowers on it, and he really didn't even like. He played well Saturday night. Like, he had a touchdown, obviously. Had a holding call that really hurt Georgia. I mean, really hurt is a general term. That hurt them on that play and negated a very long pickup. But he's just one guy. Like, everybody, man. I know Brock Bowers is good. I get it. Like, he's really good. He is probably one of the best 2 to 3 talents in college football right now. Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Brock Bowers. Those guys are not like everybody else. But that's just like, who else does USC have? The little number 1 guy, like, that guy can roll too, but they can't stop anybody. At Ohio State, they don't have the quarterback they had a year ago. It's not the same, man. It's not the same. When you look at Georgia, like, they got playmakers everywhere, including the offensive line. By the way, I took a photo of the offensive line Saturday night. You got Freeling out there, Green, Morris, Fairchild, Wilson, Mims, Ratledge, Van Prant. I can go on. Truss. Those guys are playmakers too, by the way. They're not just... We don't think of offensive linemen as playmakers. Well, when they're gashing the other team for 7 yards a run, or 10, whatever it was, that's playmaking by the offensive line. When Kendall is just bursting through like Bo Jackson, I mean, the problem with Georgia is that it's going to be a long day. And when Kirk says Georgia seems to be able to flip the switch, they flipped the switch, I guess it was halftime against Auburn. Although there have been important moments in this season. Halftime against South Carolina, the way that... I'm so glad that SEC Films crew was in there, because it gave insight into how much lack of panic there was in that game. I mean, Georgia was not concerned in any way. Javon Bullard wasn't playing in that game. Obviously, Ladd McConkey. There were a lot of people that were not playing or were limited in that game. And they just kind of came back. They didn't storm back. They came back and won the game, sort of routine. And then at Auburn, they were pushed, right? Now, on the field there, I definitely thought they were in very serious trouble on the field. You could feel it. You could see it. That crowd was rocking and rolling like it always is. But once they came back at the half and sort of imposed their will on Auburn, we've seen that before. They did that to Mizzou last year. They did it to Ohio State last year. They were just plain gonna score, and they did. And the defense was like, okay, that's enough. And Auburn really didn't do much in the second half, not that I can recall. Field goal? They score a field goal? Man, they might have kicked... They got the turnover for a touchdown from Oscar Delp. They weren't driving the ball. Like, that wasn't happening. So, for touchdowns. So, when Kirk's talking about, hey, they can flip a switch, because they can score at any moment. That's the real challenge of dealing with this program right now. This is not the 16 Georgia team or the 19 Georgia team that had a hard time scoring. What I was talking with Dylan, Matt, Ryan, and I were just kind of kicking it after the game, talking about the quarterbacks that have started significantly, not just one game, for Kirby. And Jake Fromm's going to be like, this is going to sound worse than it is, but He's gonna be like the second worst guy that started for him in seasons. And Jake Fromm was really good. I mean, Carson Beck's better than Jake Fromm is, and they are just so lethal with Carson and what he can do. And now that said, a lot of our memory of Jake was getting there in 17 and kind of absorbing everything and managing everything, and then 19, which was not good. Like Coley, the receiver, they didn't have receivers like they got right now. But still, what I don't recall Fromm ever being this electric. I mean, Carson doesn't have DeAndre Swift. He doesn't have Nick Chubb, and he doesn't have Sony. I mean, those guys are freakazoids, and if I were calling plays, I'd never run a pass either with those guys. He doesn't have that. He has a really, really good run game, but he doesn't have that. Like, Brian Herrion's not his, number 4 running back or 5, whatever it was. Elijah Holyfield. Think about those teams, man. Those running backs were just sick. They don't have that right now. They have really, really good and scary running backs because they're like saws, and they're just gonna keep, you're gonna get cut. So, but the power now is in Georgia's balance, but that they can just freak you out hard and scare you half to death with lethal passing balls. And Carson was not on. I mean, that throw to Ladd McConkey's got to be a touchdown. Ladd nearly made it one, but like stuff like that, you'd like to see that better. But Stetson had problems with that sometimes too. I mean, you want to hit guys in stride if you can. That doesn't always happen. That is one thing with Beck where that's something I suspect he will come back. I mean, that's my suspicion. I don't know. I haven't talked to the people close to him or anything like that, but that's my suspicion. We'll see. But if he does or if he doesn't, that's one part of his game that's not where the rest of his game is, it seems like to me. Man, so smart, though, too. Like, he understands. He's like, oh, I can run. Well, then give me 1 second here and let them drop a little bit further back and let me buy about 5 yards. And then he takes off, and it's a great 15-yard run. And, like, the crowd doesn't even have to scream, get down. He knows. He's like, okay, I'm going to get down. Like, there's no, let me get this extra yard. He doesn't, he plays smart. Now, he is good for about what were you doing there? A game on the throws. And he didn't, the interception he got was not the one that he earned. But inevitably those things balance out. But I do think Kirk's right. It seems Georgia is able to flip the switch.